Yo, 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 all you happy lost souls, how's everybody doing? If you're new to the channel and you found the channel, please subscribe and turn on the notifications. If you're returning and you follow my stuff, thank you very, very much. And if you've reached out to me and I haven't gotten back to you yet, I do apologize. I'm a very, very busy person and this channel makes me absolutely no money. So it's kind of just all on me, and I get back to people very slowly. If you have something that's like a super, super must that you want to just, really, reach out to me, then you can direct message me on Instagram at happylostsouls27. That would be the handle. But anyway, this video is more about when we mistaken an artifact that actually is something else or something natural, which does occur. Like I've stated before, fossils and things like that are not my strong suit. Paleontology. I am into the stone tool thing. I can identify them quickly. And when you're going through a rock pile, and I mentioned this several times at how unique the pennypack it is, just period, geologically. And this creek is so ancient that 500 million years ago, it was still flowing underneath of a shallow ocean during a period of time called the Cambrian period. So what you get in the hillsides and the high embankments is 500 million years ago where this stuff lived, this coral, and all its little polyps, and each one of these is a little organism inside of its, lined exoskeleton. And this ancient coral fossilized fully into limestone. And I've had this checked out by a couple biology professors, and they believe it's from the Cambrian period, which would be about 500 million years to 600 million years ago. It's about 150 million year, and actually 65 million year window for when that tropical Caribbean seas were everywhere. And you'll get these little fossils too. Like I'll find these occasionally, but I'm not looking for them. But if you look right there, you can see the little back end of a trilobite that's fossilized into this limestone. Now you get these imprinted fossils, which are your more common, but then you get these very strange ones. Now here's the one I mistaken for an arrowhead. I thought this was a stemmed point that was in the process of being made, but I could never explain it because this isn't how you make a stone tool. And the backside is flat, but let's look at it closely. And I noticed this when I saw this playing back on the big screen on the TV. This is a fossilized fish. And there's its tail. There's its other fin that got folded down on itself next to its body. And then you got this big eye right here. And you got this notch. I believe this might have been a type of species of an angler fish, a type of bony fish that has a weird little light that hangs off his head that kind of looks like a lure, and it'll lure other fish in. But this one, of course, being ancient. And you can see all the fin plating, the tail right back here. And then this is the inverse of the mold. So this is what they call a molded fossil. And you can see its fin here, and you can see where it goes up here. And you flip it over, you can see the details. So a long, long time ago when this fish died along the bottom and a bunch of mud covered over it, it formed a perfect mold of its body. And as its bones and its flesh rotted away, it was filled in by minerals, and you get this filled in mold, this solid outline of a fish. So not in a flat rock with a skeletalized fossil, but this fossilized when it still had gills and its eye was still there. And it's a bony fish of some sort. And it probably had two long dorsals that ran along its ends here. This could have even been like a baby coelacanth or something like that, which was a bony fish that lived way, way back in the day that they've recently, not recently, but I believe back in the 70s or 50s maybe, they found living ones, and then they found out they just went to deeper water and that they didn't go extinct. But you can see you can see all the impressions on this side of the mold that it left on its inverse. And like, I didn't notice this. I have so many preforms, and I find so many preforms at these quarry sites that I wasn't thinking fossil at all until I saw this up on the big screen, and I just saw it, and you're like, oh, yeah, that's a fish. And there's its fin, there's its eye. And you can see some other details, but very, very neat that you're holding something that was once a living organism, you know, possibly 500 million years ago. Now, the other period of time when there was some shallow oceans was about 65 million years in the Jurassic period. But this type of fish could have been in either period of time, so it's hard to say. But when you're finding it in conjunction with these corals that are extremely old, and that's not the only one I have. I just don't know what I did with some of the other pieces that I have tucked away, stashed away places. I think they're in one of these boxes, which I do not feel like opening up right now. Yes. So I wanted to throw up a quick video that that points out, yes, I stated that this is some kind of, you know, preform, stemmed, and I wasn't really sure about the identification on it in an arrowhead video. It's because it's not an arrowhead. It just fooled me. Is a fish and its little tail in the back that I thought for a stemmed portion of the arrowhead. And yeah, you can really see it once you realize what it is. I mean, you're like, why did I even think that that was flaked? Because obviously there's no even flaking, even though the edges are extremely sharp. That's just from the fossilization and getting those outside fins perfectly along the edges. So very, very cool. Those of you who are into fossils may be able to tell me more about it. Like I said, not my strong point. I'm a stone tool, early human kind of guy. When I find fossils at sites in association, like I'll find fossils in association with stone tools sometimes. Like you have this crazy point that was heat treated, and I don't really know the material. I would want to say that it's similar to this magnetite because it's very magnetic. But it's got this this galena or mic that has really filled in and calcified it. That crystal growth was after the fact. It was sitting so long, and you get these same type of this green and this like brown obsidian knives, and you can see that the flaking for the finger grips, and then you can see still how razor sharp the cutting edges are here and here. Now, these were found in relation with some of the other arrowheads that I had out that were from a much older period of time. And this is where the whole Neanderthal story comes from. Let's put this somewhere safer. So, this is a hand knife, and this is flaked. You can see the percussion ringing. This is percussion and edge flaked. You're getting a material and a design that is super reminiscent to Neanderthal Denisovan techniques, and a material, volcanic glass, that just isn't in my area unless you go way down in a mine or dig way down deep, or this was carried and brought from another place. Find this material a lot in South America too. It was a commodity actually for trade, but these were found in this ancient layer, and then we found it with this harpooned, also calcified point. We found this in conjunction with the other point, but you could see that it was fluted almost all the way in the middle here, but then it comes down like a harpoon. Now this is a very strange design. We can't really, we could say that it's reminiscent to Clovis, but it's not fluted in that way. It's only fluted very shallowly down here, and it's actually very aerodynamic. And again, if we didn't have all the calcification on top of this crystal, God only knows what this would look like, but this is so old. You're talking somewhere between 60 and 200,000 years old. Now, a layer that it was found in, it's hard for me to date because even if I found organic material underneath of it or above it, I couldn't get it tested because I don't have the money to do that. But so you're estimating where bedrock is and how far up from bedrock you are. Some of these layers, we found all of these together in one day. This, the little hand knife, and then the bigger blade here, almost like a hand axe. And we found them in conjunction with these pressure flaking tools and these fossilized bones. It looks like some kind of fossilized vertebrae that was hacked. We got another piece of bone here. You can see the marrow, and then the outside layer was replaced differently by minerals. You can find things like this in the area. They almost look like fossilized tusk. Anyway, it was a butchering or kill site that was extremely old. Really, really old. It takes 10 to 12,000 years for a bone to turn to stone, so you know it's at least that old. And then you're underneath thousands and thousands of years underneath of all this other littler stuff that we would say is Solutrean. And now, here's a great example of a Solutrean point. We found this last time we were out. Now, I have hundreds upon thousands of stone points, trays and drawers full, all over the place. You don't find them that are bifacially flaked very often, like this, edge to edge, super thin, teardrop shaped. This is a fine example of a Solutrean style point. And you're getting a little bit later in the Solutrean period because it's flaked bifacially, so it's flaked across both sides. Super thin, and then it's edge pressure flaked as well on the edges. And it makes this crazy teardrop type shape. Knife design, like this classic shape, like this, that's a very Solutrean shape. It reminds you very similarly of our modern shaped knives. And of course, all these different sapphires and corundums and that they were working with. Now, you can see like a big piece of yellow sapphire. This is kind of its natural shape, but they're using it as a brick. So they kind of shaped this pressure flaking or mace type tool, and that's yellow sapphire, extremely hard. We have a sapphire blade here, yellow sapphire. This is beautifully done. So you got that Solutrean design, and then you see the notch here for the finger, and we got another notch right here. So your hand can really sit down in there, and you got a lot of pressure on the tools where you need and how you need. And we went over how hard yellow sapphire is, only second to diamonds, and how hard this material is. Once you made a knife or a blade out of this and got it sharp, forget it. It would be like having a steel weapon against a stone weapon in all seriousness. It would give you an extreme advantage. And they weren't just making weapons out, they're making beautiful things out of it, like this turtle head effigy. Got an eye in there in the shading for the turtle. This is a yellow sapphire that has some red rubification in there. And originally, for years, we thought all this stuff was quartz, until we started really finding the other colors, and then realizing, hey, this stuff is extremely hard. Here's a sapphire scalpel type knife, another very Solutrean. See, it's flaked on the back. I don't even know how they were able to do that. And then on the front, you got this sapphire-like scalpel. But that was the older. That was 20,000 to 17,000. We'll say 19 to 22,000. We're factoring in our time. That's how long ago that was. The next people that came across the sapphire and these quarry sites, they tried to work with the stuff, but were not successful with it. Like, here's a blue sapphire. Like, this was a diamond-shaped spearhead, and the tip broke off. But this is sapphire, and this is corundum-shaped already. They didn't have to do much. They were obviously using abrasion techniques. So, like, this really abrasive type material, these quartzites and these granites, and then you get even a finer polish when you go over to something like this. This leadened gypsum, and you can already see that this is being used for polishing, because you can see how flat. Yeah, this could be used for whetstone too. It could be used for metal tools to shape them. And as we go back, like some of my friends' arrowheads, but you see this pattern? You see that shape where it's almost elevated up front? Yeah, I got another one right here. You see this shape? This technique, this is a chert tool. You see how it's all flaked to the side and then you got this elevated centerpiece? These are extremely old. I mean, this type of stone napping and technique was found in artifacts that are millions of years old in Africa. So we got some primitive stone workers that aren't even quite human, possibly, and we get these very archaic shapes in these designs. So, you know, that's even older than Neanderthal. Like that would predate a Neanderthal finds. Those style points that kind of take on this shape here. Well, anyways, I'm gonna put back her artifacts. I say hers. We found these in the same place on the same day, but she happened to find these two, and I found those two. But we were still shocked to find anything like this from that time period. And this harpoon style point that is fluted and flaked, only one other one really has been found that kind of resembles this style, and it was found in ancient Egypt, like 60,000-year-old Egypt. Put these back in for her. Probably one of the craziest pieces. We found a lot of arrowheads and things like that, but when we found that, we knew we were dealing with a layer way older. That's a beautiful piece of garnet right there too. Look at that, grabbing the red light. This, my friends, is a giant ruby right here. Maybe the largest one ever found. Huge corundum. It's even got that blue sapphire running down the middle of it. But a lot of silver samples from the silver mined area. We're going to get back into that. Because these ancient quarries, like we stated before, they were doing a lot more than just, you know, finding silver. There were groups that were exploiting it for stone and the stone trade, and then there were later groups that were exploiting it for silver and the metals. But here's a couple examples of where you see them starting to work with the sapphire and quitting. So you have this really ugly piece of yellow sapphire here, right? You have all these little holes that look like they're fossils or from fossilization. But you start noticing the black all over the back, the staining, this patina. And it looks to me like they were drilling through it with really small holes, expanding them, then heating them up. And through this process, they would get pieces of it to crack off or to break. And then it seems like they just gave up working on it and left the material aside. Now, what could have happened is they could have picked this stuff up thinking it was quartz, because it looks very similar, started trying to work with it, couldn't work with it, and discarded it. You can obviously see how much they were heating this up to try to get it to break and to manipulate it. You can see all the burning on it. And then you get a lot of patina. Like, see, like this is yellow sapphire right here. And you wouldn't even be able to really tell it until you got a backlight on it. You could see that it was transparent. But you could see the patina, that black from someone's hand. And you can see that they carved this swirl into it to meet their knuckles in their hand to make it an aerodynamic fit. Like, you know, you got a good fit there in your hand, and you've got this extension point. And this is obviously, you got more right along here. You got this finger notch to get your thumb in to create leverage. And this is a pressure flaking tool right here. And a sapphire pressure flaking tool, there isn't a better material to make a pressure flaking tool out of unless you got a big thing of diamonds. And that's the weird thing about corundum. They can either form flat as they grow, so you almost get like an agate in appearance, or they form these corundum shapes that are very square. Here's a corundum matrix right here. You could see the sapphiring in it. But you could see that, you know, you were mistaking this as an artifact almost because of its shape, almost like an axe head, but that's just the natural corundum shape. It's missing the other point that broke off. It happens a lot. Some of these corundums are really big. And then you'll get like rough sapphire forming like this, where it grows in these like flat sheets on top of one another essentially, and it can get mistaken for agate sometimes, but it's way, way harder. You put it on a sander like this with some like aluminum oxide sandpaper, which is essentially rubies, and and you polish quartz with it, you'll smell like a burning gunpowder type smell, and you'll file your quartz down to nothing in minutes. If you put that same sandpaper up against a corundum, it'll do nothing unless you just polish for hours and hours and hours and hours, and finally you'll get like a shine or a luster. But not quartz. Like I said, quite the opposite for corundums and aluminum oxides to form. But really, to get back on it, the video was about this awesome fish fossil. And some other fossils like this coral, like these little trilobites, which people find all the time. This is just the back end of one, and we can even get it on film here. It's hard to see right there. You can kind of see it's right there. It almost looks like a shell, like the fan of a shell. Right there, you can really see it. But yeah, obviously a lot of unique geology, and places have been exploited for a long time. These are other two really old artifacts too. The reason I even grabbed these is made out of this weird beach rock. Obviously really old. They were exploiting the beach rock that was back there. This is like beach rock right here. It's fossilized coral essentially. They're both phallic symbols, okay? And there's been other phallic symbols discovered like this, but at sites in Oregon that date it back almost 40 to 50,000 years. So yeah, they're extremely old artifacts. But yeah, you get all kinds of, and mostly what you see out on the table is recent stuff that I found when I was out more recently. And I'll clean it up and look at it a little bit. You get a lot of these type tools, which are really neat. And this is not penny pack. We find a lot of these in the Neshaminy, but the way that they're shaped, it's so perfectly to either to sew or to stitch or to poke. And you notice some. You hear that? That's all heat treated. I mean, look at this whetstone. Look how smooth this whetstone is here. I mean, it's like ice. Look at that. Getting it smoother than that. Oh. Look. This looks like corundum too. Like this very well could be a giant yellow freaking corundum or sapphire saw. Because it looks like corundum. Certainly looks like corundum. And this could be a big sapphire saw. You see the teeth in there. This very well could be corundum. It is catching light on the edges there. You can see it's holding the light. It's either that or it's another material that we use for abrasive purposes, and we call it emery. An emery board, like you use to file your nails. Very well could be a big piece of emery. Some of these tools are crazy. Like this is a corundum. This is a sapphire that they were trying to shape into a stemmed drill bit. It looks like, which this would make a great material for a drill bit. And they were utilizing the sapphire in that kind of respect. Then props to them. But check out this old pressure flaking tool. This is from like Neanderthal times. Look at this. It's completely black from that patina on that side. It's crazy. It goes slightly curved down, almost like it could have been a giant bowl or something because the thickness is so universal. But we look really close. If I can get the camera to zoom in really close, you'll notice that there's these lines, and there's a perfect line, two lines that run down the middle, and it looked like a piece of tape was there. So you can almost see it right in the middle there, and when you flip it over you could see it running through the back. You see those two perfect lines? It's like scored. This could be fossilized tusk or ivory. Just don't know. Well, anyways, got to see some of my little turtles too. I got turtle effigies here. You got to see some of the collection, but mainly wanted to explain the fish fossil and that not being an arrowhead, even though it can kind of fool you if you look at it like that and you see it. But you can actually see that it's the mold of a fish, fossilized fish, like I said, circa either 500 million years ago or about 65 million years ago. Because there were time periods on Earth when that both those could have fossilized. Now, we're more likely to believe that it's the Cambriotic period or Cambrian ocean time period, about 500 million years ago, that left these corals behind. So I'm kind of jumping to the conclusion saying that it's probably when this bony fish was fossilized. See, so fin, eye, pectoral fins, top and bottom, tail fin. Anyways, please subscribe, all you happy lost souls, and share your finds in your mysterious collections. Again, I am in the southeast of Pennsylvania, about, 8 to 12 miles outside of Philadelphia. And that's where all this stuff comes from. Anyways, love you all. Please subscribe, please share, and stay safe.